A meteor crossed the planet 50 years ago, giving off an enigmatic green vitality. At that time, a race between friends and Infurio and her older sister were finalists. Anton, my brother. When the race starts, Anton assumes the initiative, but Infurio tries to catch up as best she can. As the female got closer, Anton turns on a saw and slices her bicycle in half, resulting in his sister's descent into the center of the track. The race appears to be determined until a mist appears around the girl, passing through her from the meteor body. Being under the influence of an unknown force, Infurio uses her strength to fit the pieces together, reassembles her bike, and returns to the race, pedaling more quickly than ever. Anton is getting close to the finish line. His sister charges ahead with all her might and forces her bicycle up a hill. As a result, the boy loses control and collides with the garage door while his friend Olaf is hurrying to assist him. But Infurio seems more resilient due to the meteor's power and declares that her brother will have to follow her directives from now on. These days, Anton has developed into a scientist. His latest creation is a device that can absorb the energy of his sister's abilities from the meteor. Based on his estimations, every 50 years, the meteor crosses the Earth. If all goes well, he will be able to get revenge at last on Infurio. His sister, speaking of her, has turned into a supervillain, using a futuristic outfit to conceal her identity and committing crimes using her abilities. But according to Anton, all of this is coming to a close as the meteor progressively approaches the planet. Meanwhile, a young man named Will is anticipating the arrival of his younger brother, Charlie. As he waits, he makes videos of his life, displaying his mother, a novelist, his older sister, and his father, a police officer named Wyra. Furthermore, the boy enjoys comics about superheroes and explains his routine in which he endures torture at school by 3 bullies. Thankfully, his father usually saves him from these events and makes a concerted effort to combat crime in the city. His most recent case involves a villain wearing a mask, yet despite his best efforts, the police officer has not yet discovered who he is, which is none other than Infurio. The following day is Charlie's birthday, and the entire family heads straight to the hospital. In a different area of the city, Anton and Olaf await the meteor, and as soon as they watch it fly across the sky, the scientist attempts to turn on the device to absorb its energies. But the gadget isn't functioning, and for some reason, the meteor shifts course, moving through a window in the hospital. At that time, Will and his relatives rejoice at Charlie's arrival and let him sleep in his cot without being aware that the infant has simply absorbed the meteor's vitality. Returning to the lab, Anton is enraged that his creation didn't work, and he now faces an additional half-century of waiting. But he has a different thought and decides he must alter his device in order for it to absorb the energy of Infurio and turn him into the new supervillain. The following day, Will is to be picked up by his father from school, but the hours go by with no trace of him anywhere. Next, the boy is compelled to turn around when he encounters the 3 bullies who, upon noticing him, beat him up in the middle of the street. Upon arriving home, Will has a black eye and inquires as to why his dad is late. However, everyone is occupied with taking care of Charlie. To exacerbate things, when he visits his room, he finds that they have transported his belongings to his younger brother's property in his father's former office. Charlie's interest makes Will uncomfortable, and as a baby, even playing with his sibling is out of his reach. After that, the boy goes to his parents to complain regarding this and fails to observe when the infant begins to manipulate the toys with the strength of his intellect. As night falls, Will falls asleep on one of the mattresses in the workplace and ultimately knocks off a note from the wall regarding the masked burglar's case. The boy, unable to sleep, begins arranging the documents and locating a pattern among the offenses, exposing the next target for robbery. Then, Will hastily informs his father of everything. However, he's too exhausted after spending the evening with Charlie. The boy is devastated, gathers his belongings, and chooses to go out and look into the offenses on his own. However, when he leaves, he discovers Charlie's mother is carrying him as an infant. She claims she needs to focus on taking his sibling for a stroll. In the meanwhile, Anton recently made changes to his machine, turning it into a chair that can gain a superhuman's abilities. He plans to covertly test it on Infurio. However, his sister soon arrives at the facility, claiming to have found a new superpower. Next, she offers a manifestation and releases a force field that can make anything smaller. The issue is that Infurio ultimately strikes the device Anton built, and it is now too small to be of any service. In the distance, Will brings Charlie to the warehouse. Where will the next crime occur? Upon entering, he discovers a collection of men in waiter costumes stealing electrical goods. The boy attempts to capture everything on his mobile device, but Charlie breaks down in tears, drawing the criminal's attention. Will makes an effort to conceal himself among the crates with his brother, but one of the bandits notices them and attempts to seize the infant. Sadly, Charlie utilizes his abilities to get the man to reach the ceiling and then throws him to the floor, his body twisted. His friends witness what has occurred, yet the infant becomes more alert, radiating light from his body, then employing magnetism to extract the weapons from the wicked man. Then, a second thief shows up and attempts to take the infant, but he retaliates, letting loose a rush of cold air on his face. He attempts to flee when the final participant in the gang notices the newborn with superpowers and rushes at him with a forklift. Once more, Charlie is able to eliminate the guy effortlessly, discarding the forklift and dispatching every thief in their way. After the altercation, Will is astounded by the skills of his brother, who has somehow turned into a superhero. In the distance, Anton is still disappointed that his strategy didn't work out. When Infurio's goons arrive at the laboratory, they claim to have been assaulted by a superhuman being that seemed about the size of a newborn. The scientist becomes suspicious after hearing this, that the energy from the meteor has ended up in a newborn infant and departs for the hospital as evidence. Meanwhile, Will returns home with his brother. When he understands the infant can already converse to keep his parents from discovering his abilities, the child quickly rushes to show Charlie his room. After arriving, Will applies his comic book expertise to impart to Charlie the values of being a superhero and the reasons he ought to maintain it a secret. Initially, Will is interested in listing the abilities of his brother. However, before he eventually drifts off to sleep in his cot, the infant, even if he's thrilled about the prospect of the boy, who has a superhero sibling, is envious of his lack of abilities and will consequently just assist Charlie. As he considers this, the boy begins to dream of his beloved superhero with the ability to fly. The persona suggests that he utilize Charlie's abilities to take all the credit while fighting crime for himself. Will accepts the concept, and after breakfast the following day, the boy brings Charlie to the building's summit, where a covert base will be established by the two. Furthermore, Will provides his brother with a garment featuring the letter S, which stands for assistance, as he dons one with the M that stands for master. At last, Will reveals Charlie to demonstrate all of his abilities, but the infant begins to cry because he is hungry. The brother swiftly takes out a bottle from his backpack and hands it to the kid. I didn't know that another building Anton is observing in the area, seeing them both with binoculars. Will questions Charlie once he's finished eating to demonstrate his abilities when he spots a truck that is identical to the one he noticed at the depot. The boy makes a decision to pursue the car. However, on the way, he encounters the three school bullies. They attempt to assault Will once more. Charlie, however, leaves the infant carriage, seizes the nose of the leader, and begins pounding him on the floor. The child frightens the others, and they flee, which simply causes Will to be more impressed by his brother. Following the altercation, the trash truck is already unreachable, but Charlie inserts Will into the wagon and shoves him using his power and quickness. Following a protracted pursuit, both brothers are able to ascend into the truck and find themselves in a covert base. They attempt to hide inside, but the car passes through a section that is quickly shut by an electronically locked door. Will doesn't think they're leaving to unlock it, but Charlie makes use of his strength and readily dismantles the door. After reading the passage, the brothers discover a number of warfare weapons, including exoskeletons for combat. Will believes the robbers are stealing technology and weaponry, but he still doesn't understand why and keeps looking when he discovers a laboratory underground. Since it's a dimly lit area, Charlie gets fearful. He begs his brother to return because he longs for his parents. Will claims they are not yet able to depart, but his brother is only a baby and begins to wail loudly across the space. The sound of Infio and Olaf can hear them wailing. Gangsters track down the two brothers and depart in pursuit of them. Charlie, in his arms, Will frantically searches for the exit after discovering a ladder within a pipe for ventilation. He ascends at the same speed as he can with the criminals on his tail. Thankfully, the two make it to the conclusion and land in a manhole after falling from the ladder of a court for basketball, yet there is no time to waste, and they conceal themselves behind a dumpster. Because of this, the brothers defeat the adversaries, who quickly return to base and abandon the pursuit. Since they are no longer with them, Will phones his dad to come get him. Charlie, however, claims he's hungry and begins to cry once more. The boy then recalls a game that his parents played when he was younger and begins to play. He tickles his sibling. In spite of the challenges associated with being an older brother, Will is pleased to see Charlie smiling. That makes him more intimate with his small brother. After a couple of minutes, when the father brings the car, he is currently donning brand new military gear. Due to their prior shortcomings, the police station chose to grant him an additional opportunity to apprehend the masked criminal and test the police's new weaponry. Apart from the armor, a police officer was given a strong strong technological weapon that possesses a security mechanism to deter illegal activity. In any case, he gets a call from the police that they had seen the thief in a theme park. As soon as Will gets there, he offers to assist in capturing the criminal, but like previously, his father doesn't listen and instructs him to remain in the vehicle. Next, the officer sets away on his own to face the villain, and Charlie observes his brother's sadness at being excluded. To console him, the infant expresses his pride in the boy and aspires to be as knowledgeable and as resolute as he is. Will is pleased with this and regrets having made plans in order to exploit his sibling. He tries to be honest with Charlie, but on the police radio, they learn that a time bomb has been placed in the park. Concerned that his dad and other people will be harmed, Will chooses to go there to offer assistance, but Charlie declines as his father had instructed both of them to remain in the vehicle. But Will goes nevertheless and shows up as his father is attempting to face the thief in the mask. A police officer chooses to pull his pistol but remembers that he left it in the vehicle. Then he hastily grabs it off the vehicle. However, the man forgets the gun's defensive system and ultimately becomes electrocuted. Charlie notices his attempts to awaken an unconscious father, but rather than employing his abilities, he uses his infant teeth to bite his father's finger. The strategy is successful, and the policeman expresses gratitude to his son for waking him up just in time. Additionally, he understands that Will isn't nearby, but he doesn't have time to waste and hurries to stop the masked burglar with his revolver in hand. Returning to the park, the police officer aims his weapon at the offender. This releases a surge of vitality, pushing the bad guy away. The shot results in a man wearing a mask being shoved up against multiple chemical restrooms, which start to crumble, and one of them lands directly above Will. The officer then removes the criminal's mask, revealing that he is Anton's helper, Olaf. Now that he's been caught, the bomb needs to be deactivated. With less than 20 seconds before it explodes, the officer halts the countdown, saving the city as a whole. His heroic deeds are shown on TV news, and Charlie is thanked by the policeman for awakening him when it matters most. Regarding Will, the youngster is able to escape the restroom, but he's smeared with grime. His images are dispersed throughout online platforms, making fun of Will in the city. In Anton's laboratory, the researcher reads about the park bomb and learns that everything was a hoax orchestrated by Enfio. She pretended to be Olaf, the thief in the mask, to ensure that the authorities would apprehend the wrong offender while she completed her last coup preparation. Nevertheless, Anton sees a chance and must stop Enfio's schemes as soon as he notices Will's pictures. One morning, a scientist comes home with the boy after school and says he can assist him in becoming a hero instead of a joke by giving him a card that has his address written on it. Will pays little attention to the man. Upon arriving home, he observes the celebration of his father's rewards for catching the masked burglar. But Will is aware that this is not the true offender and attempts to warn everyone, but nobody takes him seriously. In frustration, Will visits Charlie's room and drops his backpack to the ground as he attempts to discover the real cloak thief's identity on his own. He is too preoccupied to notice his brother's telepathic abilities, examining the contents of the backpack. Despite Will's bad luck, the infant discovers his notes in the journal, discussing using his brother's abilities for personal gain. Charlie is harmed by his sibling and, using his abilities, he ejects him from his chamber and no longer wishes to hear from him. Not knowing what to do, the youngster ascends to the roof's hiding spot and fantasizes once more about the image of the soaring muscle. The hero informs the boy that he should not abandon his plan and reminds him that he can still count on help even in Charlie's absence, with the assistance of the scientist he encountered earlier. When Will sees Anton's card, he decides to visit the specified address and discovers that Anton lives in a trailer. The boy's presence makes the scientist pleased and claims he can assist him with transferring his powers to his brother. However, initially, he must administer a remedy he produced. This infusion is placed in a bottle, and according to Anton, using it, the infant will experience a brief weakness. Will concurs, albeit uncertainly, and takes the bottle back to his house, handing it to Charlie. Later, when his brother goes to sleep, Will gets up to check on Charlie, but he is aware of his poor health and that he cannot even talk. Feeling bad about what he's done, the child mounts his bike and sets off to locate Anton and request that he undo the concoction. Meanwhile, his family is attending a celebration in honor of the police officer for his valiant action. Furthermore, the supplier of the new weapons will arrive to collect the police officer to sign a document granting the acquisition of additional weaponry for the police headquarters. Returning to Will, he finds Anton's trailer and insists that he provided his potion and that the scientist reverse it on his brother. However, he declines and leaves. The youngster trapped in the trailer stays states he will pursue the infant to absorb his abilities. After that, the scientist departs, pretending to be a driver and taking off to transport the boy's relatives in a limousine to the occasion. Realizing he must preserve Will, he manages to get away from them through a gap in the roof and embarks on a bike ride to find the limousine. As soon as the child finds the car, he screams out on behalf of his family, but Anton notices everything and flips the limousine around, colliding with the bicycle and knocking Will to the floor. Then he dashes over and leaves, with Charlie at his side. The potion has made them weaker. When everything appears disoriented, Will spots the three bullies, but rather than assaulting them, they provide him with the bike to save his sibling. The boy gives them credit for their assistance and speeds off to help his brother. However, upon his arrival at the location, the receptionist stops him from going inside. Anton departs with the family, stating he'll take Charlie inside for the performance, his father's. Will observes the man guiding his sibling through the window and looks for a way inside. When he discovers the window in the kitchen open, he observes Anton placing Charlie inside the device. Soon after he turns it on, a green liquid begins to emerge from the opposite side. The procedure concludes, leaving Charlie without his abilities and the scientist, who is going to drink the liquid and turn into the most recent super antagonist. But before he does, Infurio enters the space and inquires about what his brother is doing. Anton attempts to conceal it by claiming that he's only trying a novel idea, and Will, taking advantage of the fact that they're both distracted, switches the container with the coffee-making liquid. As the dispute goes on, Anton chooses to remove the cup and drinks from the machine, letting his sister know that he has gotten superpowers as well. After that, the scientist punches her. However, he quickly discovers that he is still inferior and feebly retaliates, leaving a chamber locked by her brother. Following this, the antagonist departs, and Will gets ready to remove his brother when he notices the cup with the liquid in it, having the abilities. Initially, the boy is tempted to consume it and take on the role of a superhero. However, he realizes that Charlie cannot speak like he used to without his abilities. Then, Will recalls all the moments that the pair spent together and how his actions brought them closer. Putting selfishness aside, the boy provides Charlie with the drinkable liquid. However, the infant is still feeble. Things will only get worse when he learns that the event will begin shortly and his father will sign the document approving the weapon's acquisition. Thinking that this is just another scheme by the cloaked villain, the child rushes to the location and retrieves the record, threatening to tear it apart. "Why are you doing this?" his father asks, and the young man informs him that the entire event is a comedy about the actual thief in a mask. The officer queries who he is, and to the astonishment of all, Will gestures at the arms vendor. As anticipated, everyone seems to find it ridiculous and begins to chuckle at the boy. Will feels humiliated once more. However, he notices a button concealed in the belt buckle of a woman. By pressing it, he turns on Infurio's technical attire. With her name exposed, the antagonist seeks retribution, catches the youngster, and takes him up into the sky. Immediately after his journey, at a considerable distance, Infurio lets go of Will into the atmosphere. However, as it seemed that the boy's demise was imminent, Charlie shows up. Using his abilities, he flies up and saves his sibling right on time. However, the antagonist still calls out and refuses to give up. Charlie takes on the challenge and delivers a punch to the female. An intense altercation starts as the two head for the rooftops and skies where they seize a church's bells and start assaulting one another beside them as though they were blades. As a surprise, Infurio launches the bell in an attack at Charlie. However, the infant makes a portal, resulting in the bell returning to the antagonist. She then modifies her strategy, seizing Charlie's parents and throwing them out. However, the infant saves them by generating force fields to keep them safe. Nevertheless, Infurio exploits Charlie's distraction and fires a laser beam, repositioning the infant in the kitchen. Inside, the antagonist gets ready to strike her with the shrinking ray. What she didn't anticipate is that Anton escapes and throws a steel tray into the room, causing the shrink being to return to Infurio. Although it's the size of a toy, the antagonist's abilities remain intact and point her sibling at the rays. Will notices the power-absorbing machine at that moment and uses it after picking it up to oppose Infurio. Charlie soon recognizes what his brother plans to do and, using his superpowers, drives Infurio toward the device as Will turns it on, absorbing all the energy of the villain. The police put the antagonist in a box after defeating him while the remaining visitors give Will and Charlie props for saving the day. Meanwhile, Anton attempts to use his sister's fluids for abilities, but Will intervenes, stating that superpowers should be reserved for those who deserve preserve them. At last, Charlie uses hypnosis, another one of his abilities, and deletes all memories, except for Will's, of all that took place. As a result, nobody recalls that the infant possesses superpowers, allowing the brothers to resume their regular lives. After a few days, Will assists in planning a gathering to introduce their mother's new book about a baby named Charlie who has superpowers. She is unaware that the narrative is based on actual occurrences, and the book quickly becomes a huge success. Regarding the brothers, they are now closer than before and are combating crime because of Will's knowledge and Charlie's abilities. Super Charlie is the city's new superhero. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.